Okay, guys, it's time for my Toronto Audiofest 2024 wrap-up Best of Awards. Stay tuned. Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. A little tired because I spent 4 days in Fredericksburg checking on my Airbnb that's being built. I'm going to cater it to audiophiles if you've been following along, so I'll have an update on that pretty soon. Also, Doug came with me for the first time to Fredericksburg. He's a big wine drinker. Fredericksburg is the wine country of Texas. We had a great time. Live music, nightlife, dressed up in costume, tons of fun, but put me way far behind in content because not only do I have to wrap up my Toronto Audiofest Audio 2024 report, I've got lots of stuff from Angela Gilbert Young, some A/B testing of some of his gear and some of his settings, stuff you've never seen before. Also, Macaria, the open baffle granite speaker. They're based in Toronto. I went to dinner with them one night, got to see behind the scenes of their studio and some things that you've never seen before. So lots of stuff to get out before Capital Audio Fest. And wow, got some preview stuff for that too. You're not going to want to miss. But let's go ahead and take care of my report. But before, and you can jump ahead if you want, but before I get to that, I wanted to talk about one other thing that was special about this show. Pete the Greek, guy that I just met through this channel, but we've become good friends. He's come and visited me. I trust him with my ATM password. It's like we're great friends. Same thing with Doug and him as well. He came and visited me, and he came and visited me last year. One quick story. We had fun and loved this one restaurant the most, and it's actually called One Restaurant in Toronto. Beautiful people, beautiful food, just amazing place. He wanted to go again this year, and he forgot to make reservations early enough, and then so he had to kind of make up a story. He said, "Ma'am, it's my 25th wedding anniversary. That's our favorite place. You got to find us a table." So they felt bad. They said, "Okay, sir, we're going to get you the best table in the house." So we show up, and I'm obviously not his wife. And at the end of the meal, they gave us a cake that said "Happy Anniversary." So I guess they thought me and Pete were, married for 25 years. Who knows? It was a funny story. Great place, great town. Overall, Toronto Audiofest is a great show. That one in Montreal, run by the same people, top notch. I hear the least amount of complaints from any vendors about how they run their shows. It's definitely one that more press should attend. But one thing about the Pete visit is I like to, as part of my channel, give you multiple people's opinions. All my friends that come to shows, I usually do a wrap-up that includes them. Because it's not about me being a cult leader and force-feeding stuff down your throat. Obviously, I demonstrate my acumen, I demonstrate my experience. You get to see transparent my learning curve and all the things I've know and learn, and even books and A/B testing I do live, things that will give you comfort if you do follow my advice. But still, there's no one size fits all, and I don't want to be a cult leader. So what I do is I show all the other opinions of my friends, which in most cases we hear ear to ear, see eye to eye on most of these show reports anyway, but each of us gets a different perspective when we go in the room and may hear different songs, see different things. And to that end, Pete at Toronto Audiofest, he usually goes off on his own, separate from me, and he saw something that he didn't like, really didn't like. And he spit fire in this review that I filmed with him on the last day at lunch. And I was going to release it to the public. However, because he's spitting a lot of fire and, it's very negative towards one brand, there's some positives too I'll get to in a second. But it's not that I don't trust him. I mean, like I said, I trust him with my ATM code. I know exactly whatever he said happened in the room. But what I like to do is be more of a positive in the industry, feature the positive companies, not negative, unless it's something that has persisted over a long period of time, happened to multiple of my friends, has become something, then my patience wears out. Here, I just haven't had enough time to get the other side of the story, the whole story. And so I'm going to keep that video in the membership section for now that Pete gave his review. And I'm going to include the positive ones in my review as well, because we saw eye to eye on that. but just to give you an FYI. And it brings up a macro point, why I don't call out certain things, why I don't be negative. Well, because in a lot of respects, you're only doing it for, a lot of people do that just for drama purposes, vanity metrics. I don't need any of that. I got so much on Instagram right now, it's ridiculous in terms of vanity metrics. I've got 17 million views among 4 posts on Instagram. The notifications per hour are crazy, 100 per hour. I can't even keep up. So dealing with drama on the audiophile ranks and my YouTube is not part of my ethos. I'd rather focus on the positive guy unless something crosses a threshold. And there are some people that are crossing that threshold. So I may release a video in the future on certain people. But in this case, this is something that Pete only observed. I didn't observe. So I feel better about waiting and keeping that in the membership section for now. But that's just an FYI. Going forward on my report, things that I witnessed, things that I can 100% report on, and some of these are mentioned by Pete as well. Let me go through my list of some standouts. Overall, I'm going to give a macro point of this show is that if there's any negative about this show is that the Westin Hotel, those actual hotel rooms are extremely poor for sound quality. In fact, last year I had a video where Anthem did a room correction seminar and they took their measurements and they showed the measurements in that room. They're terrible. And you can hear it. You know, it's just a level below even most shows. The rooms there just have really bad bass issues and very chalky vocals, however it's set up in most rooms. Just not very pleasing. And I don't even like to stay in the rooms. If you notice my coverage, I did not sit in any room for any length of time very long, even if I had the sweet spot. It just wasn't that pleasing overall in sound quality. But it brings up the macro point. These shows really are not dedicated demos anyway. You're going to have noise floor issues, people talking. It's not to be the song you like, the volume you like. You may not have the sweet spot. There's so many variables that sound quality is one of the lowest priority things you go there for. What you go there for is what I did with this show is took the time to get to know the technology behind it, ask questions, get to know the people behind it. So when you get the technology, the people, it gives you a lot more comfort that even if you're not hearing it at the best, you know you can sniff the potential of if it's in your dedicated room, if you have DSP and root treatments, that you can get that level of performance that you would expect. So that's just a macro takeaway. But there are some rooms that impress me on sound quality I'm going to mention. But really, one of the top ones is the one I did a separate video for anyway, was Eon Art, Oracle, and Gershman. They're familiar partners at this show. They use the same room. And that's a perfect example. So loud with the open back of that room. You're not going to hear anything great. I didn't think I even filmed much sound clips at all in there. But what I did was take the time to learn even more about Eon Art, which really stood out to me last year in terms of an electronics maker that's doing stuff truly high-end, truly different, not just putting bigger heatsink, bigger chassis in an amp and, you know, charging ridiculous amounts of money for it. Nothing innovative in a lot of these mega-dollar amplifiers. But they're doing things that are very innovative. Watch my video if you haven't. And then you've got partners with Oracle, one of the longest pedigrees in the industry in terms of vinyl, and then and turntables, and even their CD player is timeless. And Jacques been in the industry forever. You can't get any higher character and experience than Jacques. And then Gershman, I've gotten to know them as well. I'm not usually a point source box speaker, but when I tell people they're looking for brands to look at, that's definitely an innovative speaker, a lot of pedigree, and the quality of people behind it would definitely be one I recommend, especially if you're in Canada. Definitely check them out wherever they have a dealer. So that group and the people and the technology, and the pedigree, just thumbs up on that room. Great again this year. Another one right next door to them I got to give props to is Cabasse. And Cabasse kind of fits both budget and megadollar. They do almost everything because it's often active speakers, but they brought their passive model. And to the guy's credit running the room, he offered to set them up for me when he was just going to bring them for static display. And making somebody, I didn't want to make him, but I just asked him if he would set them up. And doing that during a show, setting something up he wasn't planning on, and doing that on the fly while the show's going on is very tough. So I give him major props. And so even though sound quality wasn't the best in that room, you could definitely sniff the potential of Cabasse with all the different adjustments that it has, mating to the sub. If you like the aesthetic of the sphere, it's got a true point source nature to it other than the sub module. There's a lot of almost limitless performance in the right room with the right taste profile. That's going to be end game even at a low price point for a lot of people. Because in some cases that plays full range and can play at max SPLs that can even damage your hearing. In fact, Pete has the Cabasse Pearl, I believe, and it comes with a warning. So it's not like full range only at 80 dB, you know, and these fudged numbers. It plays full range and at the highest level SPLs. And the smaller ones like the Rialtos and whatnot, those are ones that major budget thumbs up on those ones you should consider if you like the aesthetics. So Cabasse is one that I definitely wanted to give shout out to. Another one, not too expensive, but one that I also visited in Italy was Unison Research and Opera. They're made in the same facility. And so when I saw a room that had both of their pieces, I asked them, can they set those up at some point? And on Sunday, they had time to put them together. And it was Unison Research. I think it was the Simply 845 and the bigger Operas. I still have to give you some more stuff from that Opera tour, but the bigger Operas really impressed me. Now, the smaller ones are nice too, the bookshelf. But once you get to the Opera bigger ones, those are ones you should consider, especially compared to Sonus Faber and others. Not only looks-wise, but performance. And they mate so well with the Unison Research. They're made in the same facility, so they're designed together. And that sounded great. It was one of the few rooms where the vocals were not chalky and really sounded natural. So I want to give a thumbs up to that room. Another room that did get good sound quality, relatively speaking, to the other rooms for those hotel rooms was the von Schweikert room. Now, it's $100-something-thousand speaker, and then they also had separately 2 subs to kind of balance out the bass. That is definitely problematic in those hotel rooms. So, lots of money, but they achieved a higher performance bar with their setup, so they deserve props from that. One of the more impressive von Schweikert rooms relative to the conditions they were given. So I want to give a shout out there. That's one thing that I do a little bit different. I don't just go into a room and judge whatever song I heard at whatever volume, how it sounds relative to the other rooms. I look at a long-standing, all my experience with von Schweikert in the mega rooms that they've had, the different gear, and then I look at how they navigated the challenge and how they benchmarked against everybody else. And even though this one may not have the best sound quality period that they've ever had at a show, I'm sure they would say so, that's probably the case. But in terms of navigating the challenges and being relatively better than the rest of the rooms around them, yes, I would give them major props at this show. Another one that stood out in those smaller hotel rooms was Audiovector. And let me tell you, the trapeze was something I was supposed to take a look at Munich, didn't get a chance. It's a trapezoid type design box, and there's some advantages to that to eliminate standing waves and whatnot. But it also has a mid-century modern, Art Deco, truly modern look that I really like. May not be for everybody, but Audiovector is a company that has great products at every price point. So if you're looking for speakers and any budget you're in, you should look at Audiovector. Definitely one that I've been impressed with. Now, getting back to the bigger rooms, I want to give a shout out to one room, Acora. They brought their existing models, the Granite, and then the sub module, which sounded great as usual, and filled that room, surprisingly massive room, with just basically the bookshelf type model. I'm drawing a blank for whatever reason on the model, but then the bass tower, really great. And this is the first time I saw him do it with Griffin Electronics, so the dealer matched those two up. So it's been showing Acora has been versatile with the tube electronics, from VAC to ARC to any kind of solid state. Very versatile and well regarded. But he has a new model coming out. Marble and ceramic drivers in a more traditional non-obelisk cabinet. And I had an exclusive viewing of that. It's in a YouTube short that you can watch, first of that. I don't have music clips, wasn't allowed to do music clips. We don't have pricing yet, although I know the pricing, but we can't disclose that just yet. But in any case, wanted to give you a heads up that that's coming down the road, and definitely something you should check out, because that was at the top of Pete's. We both spent a lot of time listening to the new model, and that was at the top of Pete's list for sure. Another one right next door to them always impresses me is the EQ Audio, the distributor that sets up 6 rooms in one of those big conference rooms and uses partitions and room treatment, and does a great job of running demos all day in each partition. And so you can get a dedicated demo in whatever one that interests you. And they had the new wireless active all-in-one focal with even changeable exterior parts to make it versatile for wife acceptance factor or changes in design. Really impressive. And I think it was like $40,000 to $50,000 Canadian, which US a little bit less. When you think about no cables anymore, no amplification, all of that contained in one module speaker, this is the future. You've heard it from Andrew Jones. You've heard it from me for years saying this is the future. Active, DSP, all these things are what can take us to that next level and appeal to the younger and the smaller living spaces that we live in, where you don't have room for these big equipment racks. This is giving you that high level of performance. So I'm glad to see it's just the ball keeps rolling bigger and bigger. But also they had the traditional setups with musical fidelity and focal. Musical Fidelity A1, I bought that last year from this guy at the show because he had it. It just came out, and that's a piece that was the first piece. The British Fidelity A1 original was my first piece in the hobby, first amplifier. And then when they re-released it, because it's got such a legendary history, I was one of the first to buy that piece as well. Not only review it, I bought it. And it's one of those pieces, if you listen to any reviews on it, the new Musical Fidelity A1, I've never seen subjective reviews almost all be unanimous. Usually there's always some disagreement, but that Musical Fidelity A1 is a great piece. But they were showing their other pieces, and Musical Fidelity does a phenomenal job with throughout their line. Also, they have monitor audio, Borison and Avic. I have videos from that as well. Again, high quality room, monitor audio. They had the Hyphen last year. I was a little disappointed they didn't bring it this year. But again, that's a distributor that knows his stuff and does a great job at the Toronto Audiofest. So always go into his room and see what he's carrying, because, yeah, thumbs up on him. Another budget room I don't want to escape mentioning is Geshelli and Orchard audio. This is important because there wasn't a whole lot of budget gear. Cabasse could be considered budget, the models they brought, but you know, the prices keep going up and up, and it prices up stuff out of the average audiophile's budget, and that's kind of a problem. But when you really look at it, some of these brands like Geshelli and Orchard are giving you the highest levels of performance at these budget points that in the past you were sacrificing a lot more. I know when I first started, it was very rare to find a piece like the A1 that could compete. And even then you had some compromises. But in a lot of respects, the cheaper gear now, when you look under the hood, it's just as good, and the measurements are just as good. And then subjectively, if you blindfolded people, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So Geshelli and Orchard did a great job. Great to see them there. If you're on a budget, I would look at their offerings for sure. Now, going back to cost no object, the flip side of the coin, I got to give a shout out to the Wind distributor, who brings these almost Tiffany-like jewelry cabinets and puts the gear in there. Really gives you the essence of high end and the whole aesthetic vibe. And the brands that they carry are impeccable, exterior and interior. Tidal at the top of the list for me in terms of their speakers are great. The Karan, Metronome, Kalista. Yeah, it's just great room. And they're also in the little basement area, so they got a little bit better sound quality, insulated from other noise. So I always enjoy going into that room. Thumbs up on them. Another big room that always does well is the Nagra. And I think they had this year Pilium and Kroma speakers. And those have impressed me now on multiple shows. So that got, and you know, Nagra, I think, is one of those cost no object brands. They do just about everything except speakers. You got to look at them if you're in a cost no object budget range, because especially their turntable, I mean, that's on my bucket list, as well as one of their legendary tape decks. yeah, Nagra's got pedigree out the wazoo, and the people behind it, I've got to know Renee and others. I think they're top notch. Now, another room, I'm going to give an award to the room in general, because one thing when I go to these shows, I like to see stuff I've never seen before. And that's actually kind of rare, to be honest. I've gone for 40 plus years in the hobby, 20 something going to these shows, even before I had a channel, many, many years of going over and over. So it's very rare to see something I've never seen before. And I got to give a shout out to the Hearken room. I wrote them down because they had two things I had never seen before. Number one, they had carbon conductor speaker cables. Now I know Vandenhall at the one time, I think they did a hybrid, and maybe they did a total carbon based speaker cable. But in any case, I never thought that that would make sense for long runs as a conductor, because it's not that conductive compared to copper and silver. So there really is no benefit. Now in small runs, like internally in a chassis, and I know Steve McCormick has done that actually in my amps, he's done in the past, carbon and silver hybrid wire from, I think, Vandenhall and Siltech. So maybe it's been done before, but very rarely will you see carbon speaker cable, conductor speaker cable. And there was one, I do remember this, somebody, I think it was Wolf or something, was the name of the guy, who did carbon conductor power cable, which is even more wacky in my belief, because that you don't want any resistance in that. But in any case, the gentleman running the Hearken room said that this is his favorite cable. Now, it's a lot of money. I think it was well into five figures, like $70,000. And I don't know qualitatively wise how it's going to compare. I'm a little bit skeptical, to be honest, but it's something I've never seen before. I like seeing rooms that do stuff that are different and bring gear that's different. And the other thing that was really unique in that room, and he's had great stuff before from Reed, the Reed turntable last Montreal was really great looking, and the Reed tone arm. But, and this turntable was innovative and cool, but the DAC that he had was one of the coolest chassis, and a unique chassis I've never seen. Stonework, it looked like, with a pendulum, upside down pendulum in the middle. Never seen that before. We didn't play that. And actually, one of the tracks he played, there was some distortion coming from the left channel. But he said it was on the recording or whatever. But that's another case where even if you hear distortion or something wrong at the time you're in the room, it doesn't necessarily mean the gear. In fact, the gear could have been defective or something could have been wrong. But it doesn't matter. This is where you have to go to that next level, evaluating the gear. Obviously, you don't want to ignore issues in the room, what you hear, but you want to be cognizant of all the variables and kind of sniff the potential of the gear, anything that catches your attention, learn more about it. I'd love to talk to him more about these carbon speaker cables in the future. Another good combo, good synergy, kind of like the Gershman, Oracle, Eon Art, is the Tidal and the Bricasti room. And they've paired up before in Canada at the Montreal show and this show, and they, again, that was one of the few rooms that, again, I would have liked to stayed in there more and listen, where most rooms I didn't want to stay in and listen very long. So props to them. And then a room that was difficult because it was open and loud, lots of traffic, not really set up for critical listening, but is a brand that is synonymous with Canada and high-end, is Bryston. And one thing about Bryston is that it's one of the long-standing companies in the industry. They've got one of the longest warranties, like 20 plus years. They've crossed over, very rare to have a brand that is accepted in the pro audio world and the audiophile world. That's very rare that a brand can satisfy both of those markets. And then on top of that, they do everything from speaker to DACs to amplifiers, electronics. This is rare to see a company that can do it all and do it all well for that many decades, still doing it well. Give them a shout out. They're synonymous with Canada, Bryston is. And I think that basically covers the rooms. Let me see if I'm missing anything. Yeah, and I just have a few kind of macro points about the show in general. Kind of ties into what I'm not releasing with Pete, but sometimes the hobby gets very toxic, and there's polarizing beliefs. If you hear something and somebody doesn't, or somebody hears something that you know is snake oil, and people always ask me, why don't you call out snake oil? Why don't you call out this? And why don't you get on the polarizing ends? Well, because I think both of the polarizing ends have problems. Now, let's talk about snake oil, because that came up in a recent video. Why don't you call out these snake oil brands? That there are snake oil brands, no doubt about it. Or using exotic physics, that if what they say is true, they would already won a Nobel Prize and be gazillionaires. They wouldn't still be in this industry. But on the flip side, we don't do everything in life 100% rational and by science alone. You know, I don't want to get into the topic of religion, but religion, not all religions can be right. And maybe science will eventually prove them all wrong. But it doesn't matter. People find comfort in some of these beliefs that aren't truly 100% rational and based on science. So we have to acknowledge and not be polarizing. And, you know, if you hear something somebody doesn't, you know, being insulting towards them, vice versa. I'd rather get rid of that toxicity because it's not valuable. Now, when you can go into a room and do an A/B test and trust your own ears to blindly or sighted, whatever you want to do, then that's another level that I gotta give props to rooms that do that. Now, can demos get rigged one way or the other? It's possible, but I try to give you as much information as I can and let you make the decision yourself. And so it's not so much a case of, at some point, you're going to have to trust your own acumen and your own, have the IQ to determine snake oil versus real. Learn, keep learning in the hobby, not think that you're the smartest guy in the room, no matter how much experience you have. In fact, some of the people that think they're the smartest guy in the room have the least amount of experience. Never go to shows, never see anything, don't even know half of this stuff. There are some bad apples, and I'm not afraid to call out bad apples. In fact, there's one that's a former felony conviction. A lot of he's got a video due in the not too distant future. But the reason I don't call out in the most part is because I'm not looking for drama. I'm not looking for vanity metrics. I sure could release Pete's video and get tons of vanity metrics. It would go viral. Trust me on that. But I'm more about focusing on the positive in the industry and showing you my acumen and how you can determine for yourself and figure out what's snake oil versus not, what is right for you and not. And, you know, being self-aware and self-educating is much more important to me for the hobby and for my comfort in what I believe in for this channel, and not being a cult leader and not calling out stuff and causing drama. But again, when it's necessary, I will, but toxicity and drama is something I don't want to participate in too much. I want to focus on the people that do things right, and if you do that, then you really don't need to worry about all the rest. Hopefully you found this helpful. I got a lot more to come, so stay tuned. And Capital Audiofest, super surprises to come, so stay tuned, guys.